Welcome to the Circuit of Success. I'm your host, Brett Gilliland, and today I'm excited. I've got Dr. Lacey Book and Dr. Shawn Dill. How you guys doing today?
Fantastic.
Doing great.
Awesome. You're part-time Indiana, part-time Florida, right? You're coming to us from Florida right now. So the weather's probably nice. If you can see my reflections here on my TVs, we are having like a massive lightning storm outside right now. So if you see me flinch, it's not what you said, it's what's going on outside. So
well, same, because there's one on the way right now to our home. So
okay. So we may be both dealing with it. So well, it's good to be with both of you. So you obviously don't just wake up and do all the things that you guys have done with Black Diamond Club and your office and all the stuff going on in your world. So I'm very excited to talk to you both. So I appreciate the time today, but maybe we could take a little bit of background from each of you and what's kind of made you the people you are today. And maybe if you want to take a run at it, Lacey, we'll start with you.
I love it. Such a loaded question. So we'll see how concise I can be, right?
You know, it's funny. I never know what's going to come out of people's mouth when you ask that broad of a question. So it's actually turned into some pretty good stuff. So that's why I do it.
It gives a lot of context too.
That's right.
Yeah, I'll start with me. I was born and raised in Silicon Valley in California. I always say it was a really interesting life, an interesting world. I grew up around the corner from Netflix when it was one little teeny tiny office. Used to walk my dog past it. I mean, I remember Google, eBay, Apple, when they were all like smaller companies. So it was a really interesting place to grow up in, you know, the land of innovation and entrepreneurship. And so I think that helped instill in me that entrepreneurial bug. But yeah, I grew up in a family that didn't have a lot of money, which was interesting in Silicon Valley.
I bet.
So I started working when I was 14 years old, and I've never not had a job since.
Okay.
It's in my blood to work as much as possible. I absolutely love it. But it was great for me because I had a great work ethic at a very young age and was able to contribute to my family. And I think that's what helped me get where I am today. Interesting story. When I was 16 years old, I was working at a bank. And one day, this lady that she used to always wait for my teller window, she slid me her card one day and she said, "I want you to work for me." And lo and behold, she was a chiropractor. I had no idea what that was or what that meant. But she told me that whatever I was getting paid, she'd pay me more. So I became a chiropractic assistant. How do you say no to that at 16, right?
Right.
So that started my chiropractic journey, went to chiropractic school, and then met Shawn along the way and ended up, moving out to Carmel, Indiana and starting a multitude of businesses to help service providers across the planet reach more people and make the lifestyle that they dream of. So
that's awesome.
That's it in a nutshell.
Well, very good. Well, thanks for sharing that. Now, did you meet him when he was in St. Louis at chiropractic school?
No, he's got a couple years on me. So I met him actually when I was in chiropractic school. He was already a chiropractor.
That's funny. That's good. That's good. Well, what about you, Shawn? Tell us a bit about your story.
Well, much like Lacey, I grew up in a sort of a middle-class family. Then my cousin was a chiropractor in Mequon, Wisconsin. He inspired me to go to chiropractic college outside of St. Louis. My father was in the military, so I had kind of grown up traveling all around the world. So once I graduated, I went to Costa Rica. I worked in Costa Rica for a number of years. I actually authored the law that regulates chiropractic in that country, moved back to the United States, moved to the Bay Area. That's where I met Lacey. We opened up an office and we franchised that office. So we have 13 locations now, eventually moved to Indiana. And then being a wealth advisor, you you want to get into a tax-free state. So we jumped over to Florida.
That's right.
And we live here 6 months and a day out of the year.
6 months and one day later, right?
Yeah. And that's sort of our story. We are sort of serial entrepreneurs. We have a lot of experience working with service providers, people that provide a service, people that believe that whatever the thing is that they do has the potential to change the world. We're big believers in that, in the fact that the majority of the world's best service providers live in relative obscurity, mostly because they refuse to embrace the concepts of marketing and sales. They see it as sleazy. They see it as business.
Incongruent.
You have a lot of doctors that come on your show. So you are a great promoter of people and their services, which is fantastic. But think about people who we think are the best in whatever it is. Dr. Oz, he must be the world's best physician because he has a TV show. But most people don't even realize what type of physician he is, what his specialty is. Most people don't understand or know if he has a license to practice medicine, and if so, where. And a lot of stuff in the media is like that. And so we're super hell-bent on helping service providers to bring their talents to the world.
That's awesome. You're right. I mean, it's like if Dr. Oz says it, it's the gospel, right? But
right.
I have no idea what his background is or even what kind of doctor he is. So I'll admit that. But people do believe that. So I'm not one of those, but there are people that certainly believe that. So what made you guys decide to go to this level versus just running, kind of a great top-notch white glove service type chiropractic office versus, helping people all over, like you said, the planet?
I think I want to say that it kind of fell into our lap. One thing that happened when we franchised our specific offices, our chiropractic offices, is that we began to realize that business concepts are business concepts and they work almost across any industry. And I think that was very eye-opening for us. And what began to happen as people saw what we were doing in the chiropractic profession and how we were able to scale the specific business that we had, they started asking us a lot of questions. And so people started coming to us, for advice. What do we do? And we realized that we could teach these things, marketing, sales, and mindset strategies to people that provided a service and help them grow in the same way we were growing our office. But in all reality, it wasn't very easy. When we started off, we didn't have I always say 2 pennies to rub together. We have 2 girls and we lived in a 625 square foot apartment. And they slept on a couch, and we went from being in that little tiny apartment, growing and scaling this franchise, and then being able to take those concepts and what we learned and went through and take them to other people.
That's amazing. Yeah. It's so cool. I mean, it's whether you're chiropractor, and as you can imagine, especially Shawn, the St. Louis area, there's chiropractors all over, right? Because of where the college is at. But then also whether you're an accountant, a wealth management person, there's a bank on every corner now. Like, how do we cut through the noise? And no matter, pick your favorite industry with the people that are listening to this right now, whatever they're doing for a living, how do they cut through the noise and say, here's why I'm different than that man or woman on that corner versus, than what they're doing?
Well, I think that you are a perfect example of that, someone that people should model, actually. And the answer comes from one of our mentors, Jay Abraham, who talks about the strategy of preeminence. And so the way that you cut through the noise is to establish yourself as preeminent. And what that means is that you become the most trusted advisor, over your left shoulder there, wealth advisors. Yeah. And what that also means, though, the way that you cut through the noise is that you're not just an advisor just strictly on wealth. You take a look at your programming. So moving into a podcast, putting videos on social media, sharing contacts, relational capital, sharing knowledge, connecting the dots for people. What that does is it makes people understand that you are preeminent. So if you're providing this information and people are listening to Shawn and Lacey and they're like, man, this is really good. What it does is it elevates Brett, because then people are like, oh my gosh, Brett's, bringing these caliber of people to us. He must really know what he's talking about. And so the next time that I have a question relative to finances, financial planning, wealth planning, any of those things, well, the first person I would think of is you. And yes, you're in a very crowded field, but the way that you stand out is becoming the most trusted advisor. And that's an advisor on all things. You just become, and look, you have the medical doctor of, the 1950s, was just the most trusted advisor. You would take your dog to the medical doctor. You would do everything, because they were just the person that solved problems.
Yeah, and they just went back, they'd carry the old briefcase, right, and come to your house back in the day and take care of you. That's why you trusted them so much. So, but so when you see that, I think it's also hard to do that though all the time, right? Is to constantly create content or constantly do this and that, but also be good at your job, right? Your career that you've chosen. And I think that's, for me, it's the importance of having a team, right? I think about our team here at work. And I think when you get people to do what they're uniquely qualified to do, that allows you to then try to work into your brilliance. Would you agree with that?
100%. And I think the hardest thing for people is letting go and beginning to delegate, right? We run into entrepreneurs all over the planet that's the hardest thing for them. Number one is they don't know what to delegate. And then once they figure it out, they have difficulty giving it up to other people. And that literally is a limitation and a stopgap for them being able, like you said, to create content, get more visibility and reach more people, but they just don't know how to do it. And they get a lot of resistance to it. We see it a lot.
But that leverage is hard.
It is
Go ahead.
hard.
What were you say?
Well, yeah, what I hear to that point is that a lot of people tell me, and it's true, I would agree, that nobody could do whatever it is, X, Y, Z, fill in the blank. Nobody could do it the way I do it.
Yeah.
Nobody will do it like
what I
me.
was getting ready to say.
See,
what I always tell people is, and I agree, but what if we had an 80% you? And what if we had two 80% yous plus a 100% you on your team? Well, now we have a 260% output. Yes, it's not 300, but this is beating 100% you.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's okay to settle for 80% of the production of what you think, and I'm going to wink at you because you think you're so good at it. But even if it was true that it was only 70 or 80%, is there anything wrong with that when we are building a team? Some people are role players, in sports, and they play their role so well. Maybe that's not the person tallying all of the points or responsible for the MVP award and winning the game. But if everybody does their job, the team can advance.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, so I got into what we would call leadership, management, whatever you want to call it, when I was in my late 20s, and now being 43. So I've done it a long time. So I've kind of got this delegation thing, not mastered, but I'm pretty good at it. Right. If you ask my team, I'm sure they'd say you got it mastered because you delegate. But I would just say that I think it's hard at the beginning because of what you just said, right? And I had a business coach tell me the exact same thing you just said. If somebody can do it 80% as good as you, you've got to learn to leverage with them. And I think what I learned was to empower them is to get out of the way, because you can always go delegate it and then say, oh, wait, and then kind of roll up your sleeves and work on it with them. My philosophy has been delegate, get out of the way, and empower them to learn and grow and make that decision and become really good at it. So thoughts on that?
Well, that's the two people doing the work as one. And honestly, we battled that as a couple. We both are chiropractors. We both work in our business together. It's easy to fall in the trap of, oversight, or maybe I've brought someone in and now you and I, Brett, we're working on a particular project. But if we step back from it, it's a project that one person could have done. Maybe I didn't trust you to do it, or maybe you didn't trust me. And so now we're two people doing the work of one. I mean, that is the classic inefficiency that you find in so many businesses, because you have a micromanager. And in reality, if you can realize this, then you can free up time to be more efficient. You can make more money. But the trap is there's a lot of people that don't realize this. And in essence, then you're just wasting money. You're wasting human resource because you're just doubling up on your efforts.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. What have you guys learned, do you think, through this pandemic? And I say through it because I don't think we're actually all the way through it. And so what have you learned that, though, from either, as personal lives, but even professional lives and running businesses? What have you learned the most, do you think?
Oh, I think the number one lesson out of all this, and we've always been believers in this pre-pandemic, but what we really learned is that collaboration and relationships are the most important thing when it comes to your personal life, but most importantly, stabilizing your business. I think through the pandemic, we saw a lot of businesses, unfortunately, not make it. But we also saw a lot of businesses thrive. And those are the ones that stuck their neck out and really put effort into helping each other, collaborating, and deepening the relationships in their community and other businesses that they could do work with. And I think for us, we've been preaching that for a really long time, but we saw our relationships really thrive throughout the pandemic. And it's just benefited us in so many ways. And it's benefited the people that we help in so many ways as well. That's probably the biggest lesson. Yeah.
Your 13 locations, where are those at? I mean, you don't have to name every single one of them, but I mean, they're across the country, right? They're not just like in Indiana or just in Florida. Is that fair?
Yeah. They span all the way from Hawaii to Tennessee.
And actually none in Indiana and none in Florida.
Yep.
Where we live.
Well, we'll have to work on that, right? We'll get to work on that. So, but I mean, I think that's important too, because even pre-pandemic, I mean, that's one of the things I notice as a leader now too, is having offices all over the place is still connecting with those people when it's not just, hey, I can go down and grab some water and, say hi to so-and-so. It's a lot harder when you're spread out. So for people that are listening right now and they've got offices here and there and they're leaders and they're trying to figure out how to stay connected through a pandemic, but even pre and post, what do you do for that? How do you create your culture all the way in Hawaii when you're in Florida and Indiana?
Well, I mean, I think you'd get two different answers from us, but for me, I'm slightly older, born in 1971. I am still a big believer in the personal connection. I mean, we didn't ever lose the ability to fly. Sure, if you're anti-mask, you have to wear a mask. We held in-person events. We do 4 events a year. We held in-person events through this entire thing. In August of 2020, we had 300 people together in Indianapolis. I'm a big believer that people now more than ever want that personal connection. So if that means that I go to you, that's what that means, right? I think that will go an awful long ways. Now, I'm not so ancient that I'm like anti-Zoom. We're talking, leveraging technology to you right now. We're not in the same room with you. But I also think that people are getting tired of connecting, through a screen. I feel like it's harder for people to download content connection because of the distractions, and it's just a very difficult thing. And I believe that the people that figure out the actual connection have a massive advantage right now in post-pandemic over anybody else who's trying to completely automate your business to where we only interact this way.
Yeah. I would probably add to that. My answer is a little bit different. I would say transparency. For us, I think creating a super strong culture among your community, among your team, amongst the leadership is being as transparent as possible. You talked about empowerment earlier. I find that when we're super transparent with our team, telling them the things that we're going through, the things that we're thinking, telling them our goals, what we're trying to go after, who we're trying to help, by having that level of transparency, even with the people that you serve and the people that are your clients and you take care of, man, it just creates a great community and a great culture because there's open lines of communication, ability to share lessons, and really an understanding of the vision and the growth that you're trying to go after. So we have always been transparent with the people around us, but I think we even opened that up a little bit more throughout the pandemic, and people really appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, transparency leads to a deeper relationship.
Yep.
And there's no doubt about that whatsoever. So, Shawn, one of the things it says here on your topics, one of the things I wanted to discuss about in our research is you talk about this alter ego. Let's talk about that for a second. You hear like Kobe Bryant talk about his alter ego and stuff like that, right? So when I hear you or see this down here, what's your alter ego? Talk to me about that. What is it?
Well, that's a derivative of Todd Herman's work. So I mean, he'd make a great guest here on the podcast. Happy to make that connection. Yep. Todd Herman, author of The Alter Ego Effect, his book available on Amazon. And yes, Todd Herman worked with people like Kobe Bryant. And through studies, what we realize is that we all wear multiple masks in our daily lives. And it traces back even when we were kids. I grew up as a single child. So, I didn't have brothers and sisters, so you make them up, right? I'm
an only child myself, my man.
Yeah. Right. So you understand the alter egos, right? Like, I love to dress up as superheroes. You talk to yourself, but what you realize is that a lot of people have this thing, and when it comes to like selling, when it comes to leadership, when it comes to public speaking, where they're like, well, I don't like to do that, which is fine, but then create a character that likes to do that. And everybody on the planet knows what it's like to play a character. And so just make the character, put some thought into it, make the character, and then you show up as that. Maybe you can create a character that is amazing at selling. And, Todd talks about a lot of the things that might trigger you. LeBron James puts that powder in his hands and throws it up. So there's these physical acts, as a kid, you put on the costume and you become Superman. Yep. LeBron throws the chalk and he becomes, the king. Mamba, when, literally Kobe talks about when he became Mamba. He created that character. And then you have to have what Todd calls totems, these triggers that put you in that. Todd Herman wears eyeglasses that have no prescriptive lens in them. But when he puts them on, almost like a reverse Clark Kent, like he becomes this entrepreneurial master. And so I think that, when I read that book and I've had a few interactions with Todd, that is something that's transformative for entrepreneurs. And whether you dive deep and you want to win the PGA championship and you become John Daly to win it, that's great. Or maybe you're just in work, but also look, if you want to be a super husband or a super wife, that's a character that we play. That's a role that we play. And if some thought went into it and we actually worked at that character development, it's unstoppable.
Yeah. Well, it's visualization at its finest, right? I mean,
Right.
you talked about golf and for those, I think we did this before we were recording. I talked about Carmel, Indiana. I was there in 1991 for the PGA championship that John Daly won, but athletes, and my gosh, if you can, I'm sorry, but the microphone's picking up all this thunder and lightning going on.
No, I can
it's
see
loud.
it in the background. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
it is so loud. I'm like, holy smokes. Where was I going? But the visualization is so powerful, right? Because you even see some of it in golf where these people, they shut their eyes, they're picturing the shot. I mean, so what advice do you have for the business person that's not an athlete, right? They're not going to go hit that shot or take the shot or make the shot, but they're walking into a boardroom and they're getting ready to give a presentation. How do we get there? What do you do? What's the pre-work look like?
Yeah, we're big believers in what we call anchors. And so we believe that you can literally embed the neurology of success within you. And so there's a lot of studies and stuff out there. And I think even Jordan Belfort used to talk about it, right? Where you would go out and let's say that you had a sales presentation and you just did amazing and you closed the client and they were all about the project that you presented. In that moment where you feel that heightened level of success, you need to do something. It's either a physical act, maybe it's something that you smell, maybe it's a way that you clap or you touch your ear, and you would literally embed that feeling of success in you. That neurology, it embeds itself in your neurology. And then if you do that over and over and over again, what begins to happen is you get to override your neurology. Now, say you're going into the biggest sales presentation of your life, you do that same thing before you go in. So you already have that feeling of success before you present, and it allows you to be more successful. And there's tons of studies on that. We have our clients do that, like I said, with smells, with a movement or emotion or a word, and they get to be successful and they get to be winning before they even do the presentation.
I love it. I love it.
Something interesting to add there, the human brain, and I just from the content I've seen on your podcast before, I believe your audience loves the scientific side, the actual material side of things. And the interesting thing is that the human brain cannot distinguish between fantasy and reality. And that's one of the strangest things. If you stop for a second, your mind doesn't know the difference between things you're making up in your mind and what's real. For a mature audience, if you have sexual fantasy thoughts, you get a physiological reaction, even though there's nothing happening. If you have thoughts of scary things, you get your heart races, your blood pressure goes up, even though nothing's happening. And so one of the really interesting things is that you can actually reverse engineer this and trick your neurology into believing things are happening, like you're closing the sale or you're speaking in front of 10,000 people effortlessly, even though it's not really happening. And then if you do things over and over enough, what happens too is your neurology, your brain likes shortcuts. How many of us have ever driven home and you kind of zoned out and then you just are pulling into the driveway and you're like, how did I get here? Right? Your body just does things on autopilot. So we could actually teach your body to be successful on autopilot if you chose to do so.
And how much work goes into that?
Well, work is a relative term, but it's like, I think it's how much thought goes into that.
I like that. Right? That's true.
You have to put a lot of thought into it because again, it's bringing yourself, a lot of people would call it meditation, where we're just quieting the mind. Well, if we had purposeful meditation where we were in moments of deep thought, but we were programming ourselves to a future version or a future outcome that we desired, it's uncontrollable because your brain will manufacture that. Again, because you don't know the difference between real and fake.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if
And
I
I
could,
got I mean, if I could grab it over there, I'm not going to right now, but I carry my book, my briefcase everywhere I go it's really a statement. It's a one pager and it's kind of like self-talk. And I've done this for
yes,
years. I mean, like, gosh, this is well, this Saturday is my 20th anniversary of being in the financial services industry. And so,
nice.
you learn a lot over 20 years. Right. But one of the things that I look back at my career, a constant kind of self-talk, self-motivation, self-challenge, but goals and dreams and visualizations of where I want to be in the future. And I read that. And especially as I was younger, I mean, that was the morning and at night, morning and night, every day. Right now, it's maybe 4 or 5 times a week, but still, I think that is critically important for our own success. Don't you?
Yeah, that sounds like that's an anchor for you, I mean, something that helps breed that success in you. And I love that you said that you used to do it at night as well. We talk about that all the time. You hear it everywhere. Oh, you have to have this killer morning routine. You've got to
Yeah.
wake up and read your affirmations. You've got to, get your mind right as soon as you wake up. And we're like, yeah, but then what happens at noon?
Right.
If you
Right.
have a negative thought process, noon creeps around and you're thinking
It's over.
negatively again. It's
Yeah.
over. So I love the idea. We're big believers in if you're trying to change the way that you think, if you're trying to get towards your goals, if you're trying to go after success, you need to interrupt the negative self-talk and the negative patterns that you have more frequently than just in the morning. And so I think that's key, doing stuff at night as well.
Well, I mean, it's proven, right, that the sleep that we have, it's your body's actually recovering and
Right.
building the muscle, right? The building the muscle is not, I mean, yes, it's from working out and lifting weights and doing things, but the sleep is a critical part of that muscle. If you want to be stronger and faster, sleep more, right? While
Right.
you're working out versus staying up all night. But the other thing, I think when I put it in my brain, I read it, I don't know. I'm not a sleep expert, but I believe it to be true. And maybe that's half the battle, but I believe it to be true that what I'm putting into my brain, I'm actually thinking about it while I'm sleeping without even knowing it. So then you can wake up more energized. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important that we have to have those times to self-talk at night, because to your point, I'm not a morning person. I
Right.
tried the whole 5 a.m. thing. And then like by 3 days in, I'm pissed off. I'm tired. I don't want to do it. I'm like, and I finally had to tell myself, you know what? I just am not like the Miracle Morning, Hal Elrod. I love that book. I love everything about it, but I'm not going to do it in the morning.
Yeah.
At least at 5 a.m, right? I'm going to do it. And I call it my focus 90. My focus 90 is when I first walk in the door at the office. What do I accomplish in the first 90 minutes?
Yep.
Right. And I think it's okay to not beat yourself up over not getting up at 5 a.m. and doing that. So if I followed you guys around, Shawn and Lacey, and I had a camera and I said, what are the things that no miss items that I would see every single day with you two?
Well, mine is more in the morning. I'm more of a morning person than her, which I think is also, important if you're in a relationship. Not everybody's, a morning person, like you said, and you have to be able to, modify your routine for that.
Yeah.
I like the morning times to get myself together, more of a morning routine type of guy. But I'm very big on goals and rewards. I usually have with myself, and I say usually because I kind of flip back and forth between old school writing and electronic version. But I carry around 2 books. They're just blank books. One of the books is called The Book of Yet, where I'm just constantly writing down things that people tell me or ideas that I have, things that people tell me, but that I don't understand yet. Someone might tell me about a mega Roth IRA. And I would be like, well, that sounds great, but I don't even know what that is. And so I would write that down because I just don't understand it yet. I can't compute it yet. Or goals. Someone might tell me, or I might tell myself, like, I'd really like to go to France. But I'm not going there this month. So I'm not putting in my calendar yet. And so I'd put that there. It's a constant check back and forth between that. The second book is my calendar. So another one of our mentors, Dave Meltzer, becoming a student of your calendar, being absolutely committed to what's on that. And so that would be a must. And I think I saw on your watch a calendar notification pop up. I love that. Props to that, because I like to run my life strictly off of what's on that calendar. If it's on the calendar, we're doing it. If not, I don't do it. And so that would be kind of the routine that you would see. Try to keep everything as smooth and as efficient and effective as possible. And I'm in a race against the world to gain time against other people, not necessarily to gain money against them, but to gain time. And then I get to allocate that time how I want. I play a lot of golf. And so you will see me race to try and accumulate time against the field. And then I'll burn that time doing something like golf, allow the field to catch up. And then I go back into that same race again.
I think we get along. I like to play some golf. But I'm going to get to yours too, Lacey, but I think you made a comment of calendar management, kind of, I think is what you said exactly. But I always talk about there's only 24 hours in a day, right? And whether you're the president of the United States or the whatever, I mean, from the top to the bottom, we can't manufacture more time, right? And so I think it's critically important to manage ourselves. And I'm with you. I have to manage that time and put in my family time and my play time with the work time. And I think sometimes we can prioritize over some of that stuff. And then you're just constantly working all the time.
Right. And I love that you said that, because people always say, oh, it's time management. It's time management. No, it's actually self-management, right? It's self-discipline. And the most disciplined people actually have more time to do things, right? And so that's a big thing for us. I mean, we have 4 large companies that that take up the majority of our time, but we're very specific about when we work on certain companies. And so our calendars are also very dialed in on what we do on every single day of the week. And if we stick to that, then we have time to do the things that we love, going out on date nights, golfing, cooking, whatever it is. And so for me, when I wake up in the morning, the first thing, I have to have coffee. So if you had a camera following me, you would see no matter what, every day I got to start with coffee, because I'm like you, I'm not a morning person. So I got to get going. But I like to actually take my time in the morning, because I'm not most creative then. I like to be a little bit slower with my morning. And then usually about an hour after I wake up, then I'm going through a lot of the favorite things that I like to read, whether it's a book, whether it's articles. I like to feed my brain. Then I'll go in and look at my calendar. What do I have for the day? And then I'll go in on my emails. I never like to start with those, because I hate starting off on other people's agenda, because that just gets the day going off wrong. But then depending on the day and what company we're working on, that's what we go into. And we're very, very really good about our time and sticking to what we need to do.
Are both of you readers? Do you like to read?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you reading right now?
Right now, I am mostly reading just articles. I'm really into that. Was it Hustle?
Oh, the Hustle.
The Hustle. And so I've been just going through a lot of their old blogs, stuff like that. I love it because it talks a lot about businesses, entrepreneurs, things that are happening in the tech industry and stuff like that. Sometimes I'm reading books. Sometimes I'm more into blogs and articles and listening to podcasts. So that's kind of where I'm at. I ebb and flow, but that's kind of my thing.
And I'm in Next 5 Moves, Patrick Bet David. And then I am constantly reading Mr. X by Jay Abraham. If you can get your hands on Mr. X, you really don't need, in my opinion, you don't need another book.
Yeah.
Mr. X, huh?
Mr. X.
Yeah.
I've never even heard of it. And I'm a
literally,
big
you could read 2 pages out of that book and have 20, 30 ideas from just 2 pages. It's a phenomenal book.
And that's by who? Jay Abrams?
Yes.
Jay Abraham. Yeah.
Abraham. I'll write it down. I'll be buying that later if I can. So talk to us about you talk about owning the stage. And so when I say that, I don't really mean like a stage, like I'm going to go out and, give the talk, right? But how do we build more confidence? I mean, people are coming out now, starting to see each other and interact. And I got to be very transparent that I really kind of enjoyed this quarantine thing, man. And now I've got to go back out into this world, and you're going to different events and you're just going out. And I've learned that during the quarantine, I was only around my family and friends. Right. But now you're having to go out and kind of dust off the old, go out and shake hands and kiss the babies. Right. And so how do we get through that? Right. How do we get through that and stay confident and want to go out and do those things?
I say my favorite line that I live by is done is better than perfect. I think the biggest thing is people just overthink stuff. I mean, it's not about going out there and having all the confidence in the world. It's just about getting out there. Right. And I think that that's the biggest thing is, people they struggle doing content. They struggle getting on stage. They struggle doing Facebook Lives to their community. It's just because they overthink it. So it's not necessarily about how do I build my confidence? Your confidence will be built if you just get out there and start going.
Yeah, I like that. So, and I'm assuming you guys are big believers in having a process. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great statement.
Yeah. And so most successful people are passionate about that, right? So what are these things? You call them system hacks, right, Lacey? So what are some of those system hacks, things you can help our business leaders with right now for their process or their systems that they follow?
Yeah, well, number one, I think documentation is key. We're big believers in infrastructure before growth. So if you're trying to grow your business and trying to grow your company, man, you've got to get your systems down first. And there's so many ways now with technology that you can begin to create systems for your business. That's really easy. Number one, if you don't have a team, I love just documenting everything on something like Loom, where if you're doing a process that's already part of your business, loom.com is a screen capture where you can just hit record. And let's say that you're setting up a Facebook post. You can literally record while you're doing it, because you were going to do it anyway, and talk into a microphone. And now you've got the process for how you set up a Facebook post. And then it's just sitting in Loom. And if you hire somebody on your team, now they can go watch it and they get to learn how to do it. So I love.
I'm gonna stop you right there if I can.
Yeah.
So again, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna do client rebalancing, and I'm Taylor on our team. He goes to loom.com. I'm assuming you sign up, you get a contract or something. And then, so we'll get some commission on that or something, right? For you guys. I'm kidding.
This is not a sponsored ad.
Yeah. And so he can go in and say, okay, here's how we do a rebalance, right? So for the next employee, as he's growing and he's phenomenal at what he does, that's training the next generation. That's that leverage that we talked about earlier.
Yep.
Instead of sucking up more of his time, we're sucking up the loom.com time, and it's exactly, they can watch as many times as they want.
Exactly. And what's amazing about that is like,
you can stop the show. I'm out. No,
you're done. Drop the mic.
I got my ID.
Well, let me give the hack on that. The hack is you could leave it in Loom, but the hack would be to put it in a Facebook group for your company. So Visionary Wealth Advisors, Facebook group. The only people in the group are your employees, and we put the Loom videos in there. That way, one day Mary is no longer with the company. We just can kick her out of the group. New person comes in, we drop them into the group, and literally in the Facebook group, there's videos of how to do everything. And so, I mean, in the social media world, rather than using it as necessarily social, we could actually use it as a training ground as well. If we were able to be disciplined and not put, nonsensical stuff in there, we just literally had all of our trainings in there. We've got videos of everybody doing their job for the next person.
And of course, if it had client sensitive information, you may want to put it in something more secure, but if it's just a process, you're okay there as well.
Right. Yeah. That's me. Well, you put it on your intranet, right? You're in all the cybersecurity stuff. I mean, it's there. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I like that. So that was number one, infrastructure before growth, document the process. We can create these videos, put them in a Facebook group. What's number two?
Just utilizing your team. So a lot of people say, but Brett, I don't have time to create all of these systems. And I'm scared to hire because I don't have any systems to train on. Well, then that means your first hire is somebody that should be really organized. And then what you do is you can just train them. So you tell them this is how you do something, and then you leverage them to create the training guide for you. Now, here's the ticket though. You have them go in and create the training guide. You just need to make sure that you review it. So now your only responsibility is to review it and make sure that they're doing it in the way that you thought you trained it. And then that's so great because you get to clean up your training processes and make sure that your teaching is effective, right? So that's also another hack if you're going to go into hiring. I love that, using the first hire to build your systems for you.
Yep. Okay. Those are two very good hacks. I like that. So what do you wish you knew 10 years ago, right? If you could look back and tell your 10-year younger self, hey, Shawn, Lacey, wake up. You should know this. What is it?
A million things. I think that's how you earn the right to mentor, teach, coach, etc. Is that you have a long laundry list of things that you wish you knew. I know a lot of people that their answer would probably be nothing, but they probably can't pass on knowledge to somebody if you haven't learned anything in your 10 years. I mean, man, I think, taxes is one, the way taxes and finances work. When you talked about getting through COVID, one of the things that in that experience for me that I learned in the COVID time, or, we're still in it, but in the peak of the pandemic, is that it's really easy to make a lot of money in an artificial economy. So if we're going to inject a lot of money into people, money flows from people that don't know what they're doing with it to people that know. It was an easy way to inflate the upper class, was dropping money on everybody but them. And in watching that money flow to them, you're seeing the billionaires of the world become hyper billionaires.
Yeah.
So it's easy to do that in an artificial economy. It's really difficult to do that in a strained economy. And I think that that's a potential where we may be headed. And so at least from 10 years ago to now, I am thinking about that. 10 years ago, I would have been like, this is great. And I probably would have bought a ton of stuff because we had a massive year. Now I'm a lot more conscious of that, the way taxes and finances work. And the other thing that I would say is the value of relational capital. Relationships, I always tell people now at my age, you could strip me of everything. You could take all of my money, our homes, all of our assets. As long as you left me with my phone, I'll be able to get right back in business. If I lost my contacts, I'd be in big trouble. But as long as I have my relationships, I don't worry about the future, because relational capital is really what plays.
Yeah. I can't remember. Somebody was on the podcast. It may have been Dave Meltzer talking about that. I can't remember who it was, but that was a key learning for me, is because you're right. I mean, I always say if the financial industry ended tomorrow, obviously let's hope that never happens, right? But if it did, I believe through training, but through relationships, man, like you just said, I could get back up on my feet and be okay. It would not be fun, but you could do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could do it. Yeah. So that's awesome. So last couple of questions. So if I steal your cell phone from you, what are some things you absolutely, besides email, because that's boring, what do you hope to God I do not delete?
What
phone numbers?
What,
yeah. Well, yeah. So like not the phone number. So I'm gonna put all sorts of rules. It can't be your calendar, your contacts, or your email. I would never delete those. Is there anything else that you're like, gosh, this really makes my business run, or my home run, or whatever?
So I would say, so one of the things is our team is currently in Indiana. We're in Naples, Florida. And so you understand that if you're trying to manage a team, you need to have a mechanism where you can keep track of what's happening. Yeah. And so for us, we use ClickUp. That's just our project management system. There's Monday, there's other things out there. But that for me, that ability to check in on where they are with projects, communicate, see what's actually happening in real time is very, very powerful, because it allows me to keep track of the health of our business. So I would hate for you to delete that app. Yeah. Because I would be disconnected and I would like it. Yeah. What about you?
Well, I'll make Brett happy. I'd say all my little financial folder. At least I could check.
One password too. Oh my God.
And this is one that, and another thing that I'm a super believer in is, and I think especially with your field, you may resonate with this. Not only is it important our human relationships, but our relationship with our finances. Mm-hmm. I've learned throughout life that people that struggle with finances, AKA people that don't have the financial situation that they want, they ignore it. They don't want to look at it. People that are in a strong financial position, they are acutely aware. They are acutely aware of how much money they're managing, how much is in this bank account, what their investments are. And so one of the things that's super important to me, like as part of my morning routine, is I do have an actual check-in with our finances literally every day. I go through, I have this financial folder, and I go through and I look and just see where everything is at. And it's in the same way that I would check in with my wife. If I was away on a trip, I wouldn't just ignore her for 7 straight days. I would want to call and I would check in. I want to have a check-in. And so if I want to have a great relationship with my money, I need to have that daily check-in. And so that's also, I would say that my little financial folder, all the bank apps and the investment apps, and I literally go into each one of them and check them out every day.
Yeah. Well, it's like going to here at a Cardinal game, right? You always look at the scoreboard.
Right.
It's what inning it is, how many outs there are, how many balls and strikes, what the score is. It's like, and we do that with our clients, but is knowing the score, knowing where you're at is critically important. So, awesome. Well, it's been so fun having you. I mean, we could talk for hours and hours and hours, on this stuff, but just lots of takeaways on that. Anything you want to leave us with? Anything maybe I didn't ask that you thought maybe I'd ask? You'd like to leave one more pointer out there? Are we good?
No, it's always a pleasure to do interviews with professionals. I'm sure you know how that is, where sometimes you get on one and you're kind of directing the interview. So we're super gracious for
Well,
you
even the
having
word
us.
that you're using, the word professional with me in front of a microphone, I'll take that.
Yeah.
This is a hobby and a passion for what I love to do and that's why I do this is to give back to, the community that we have of visionary wealth advisor clients and the community and friends and whoever else listens. It's fun to have access to people like you. And one, selfishly, I call it my weekly therapy. And I take notes on every single one of these, and it's just something that you can apply to your business. And that's my hope, is for listeners to take one nugget from Shawn and Lacey today and apply it to their business. Literally. So if it's 30 seconds of this 45-minute discussion, that's a win, right? It's a win for you. It's a win for us. So I appreciate you being with us today.
Appreciate you. Thank you.